Hi, my name is Leah and I am a Noteful tutor and review instructor. Welcome to our Wednesday video series here on YouTube. If you're not familiar with what we do, we post a question for writing or speaking to our forum each week and invite students to submit their responses to the question, and then we choose one to review here on YouTube. So I'll tell you how to participate if that sounds like something that you're interested in at the end of this video, so stay tuned for that. But I'd like to get started with a writing review today. So let's take a look at our question. It has been announced that a new manufacturing factory will be built near a park in your neighborhood because of the open space. Do you support or oppose this plan? And of course, use details and examples to support your explanation. So we had a lot of strong submissions this week, so thank you to all of the students that participated. What I'd like to focus on today in this writing review is clarity, so how to really increase the clarity of your writing. Now, this is an excerpt from the submission that we received, and this particular essay was actually quite strong. Okay, it receives a score of between 22 and 24. The word count was a little bit high, so to this writer I would focus on reducing the word count and improving the clarity with the time that you have, provided you are able to write 560 words under actual TOEFL conditions. So that does seem a little bit high even for a native speaker within that 30-minute allotted time frame. The examples that were provided are actually quite good, but again lacking some clarity, and I just want to focus on how to improve that today. Aside from that, there are some grammatical and mechanics issues in this essay, but as I said, it's very good. So well done to this writer. Now, how do we improve clarity? All right, when you're introducing examples in the body paragraphs of your essay for writing question 2, the independent writing task, you want to think about your examples as being a story that you're telling. So you want to imagine that you are out to dinner with some of your friends and you're talking about something that happened to you at work or school or in your personal life, and imagine that you're telling this story. So you're talking about the characters, the people that are involved. You're creating a scene. You're describing the surroundings of where this took place. You're talking about the events. You walk your friends through the story from beginning to middle to end. If at any point you say something that's confusing or you eliminate a detail from your story, one of your friends is likely to chime in and say, "What do you mean by that?" So that's what I want you to think about when you're developing examples for the independent writing task. Think about it as telling a story, and you want to be able to provide the kind of clarity that will prevent someone from saying, "What do you mean by that?" So that's what we're going to focus on today. What kinds of questions might be in the TOEFL graders' minds when they're reading this particular essay? So as I said, this is just an excerpt from the essay. This person actually opposes the plan for a manufacturing facility to be built in a park near their home or next to a park near their home. Okay, so the first body paragraph provided a strong reason and example, and this is actually the second body paragraph. So let's take a look at it. It begins, "Furthermore," second body paragraph, "it may also causes disturbance to the surrounding area." So this person's reason for opposing the plan is that it potentially causes disturbance. Now, he or she goes on to connect this reason back to the introduction, back to the opinion that they stated in the introduction, with the two subsequent sentences. "The sound produced by the factory during the process of manufacturing is so loud that it can be heard for far away. This is very distracting for the people who stays around the factory's circumference, as they could not focus on the tasks on their hand." Now, the first thing that I think about, besides again some minor grammatical errors, is what do you mean by "on their hand"? What does that even mean? Here's my hand. If something's on it, that is on your hand. Now, what this person has attempted to do is use the idiom "at hand." If something is at hand, it means it's readily available or you're involved in it immediately. But in using this idiom inaccurately, it has confused me, the reader, as I'm trying to understand what he or she is saying. So we've mentioned this in videos before and on our website, and I just want to reinforce it. If you don't know how to use an idiom correctly, don't use it at all. Because what will happen is it will end up affecting the clarity of your writing, as you can see here. Now, let's go on. For instance, so now the example is being introduced. I remember it was last year I was preparing for my final examination that was going to take place in a week's time. The next question that enters my mind, what exam? Now, if you're struggling with word count, we often tell you to add detail, okay? So you can tell us the specifics. Where were you studying? What class were you taking? What was the exam that you were preparing for? And that will help increase your word count. If you're already writing over 500 words within 30 minutes, you don't need to add that detail to increase the word count, but you do need to be specific with the details so that you can increase the clarity. So this is what I really want to focus on today. As a TOEFL grader, I would be thinking, what exam? What are you talking about? Now, when you develop a story in English or in English writing in general, you want to think about the sentence that you're writing as being an extension of the previous sentence. So it's providing some clarity or some expansion of the previous thought. So I'm going to look to the next sentence, and I hope that that question of what exam is answered in the next sentence. The nearby factories was very active that time, as it was almost time for the Muslims to celebrate their festive day. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce that because I don't want to mess it up. Now, the problem is, first of all, this sentence does not answer my previous question, what exam? What is this person referring to specifically? Not only that, but it raises a new question. What is the connection between factories making noise or producing products and this festive day? So I have to assume that the factory is creating products that are often given in exchange with other Muslims on this particular holiday. Okay, but that's a connection I have to make. That's a stretch for me. So you want to keep in mind, as we've said many times before, that the TOEFL graders are not going to make any assumption about what you mean. Okay, so if you say the factories are producing these products because it's this specific time of the year, you want to clarify that connection a little bit. Again, I'm going to look to the next sentence and hope for that clarification. They were manufacturing a huge amount of things as it was demanded during the festive season. Okay, now I know that these manufacturing factories are working harder than ever to produce products that are exchanged during this particular time of the year. But now I'm thinking, what things? What products? Again, I'm not really sure what you're referring to specifically. Let's move on. The noises produced by the factories were so distracting and it affected my study progress. Okay, now I have another question. How did it affect your study progress? So this is where you can add some specifics, again, if you're struggling with word count, to increase your word count, otherwise to provide some clarity. So for example, did the noise keep you awake at night and then you weren't able to focus the next day because you didn't get a proper night's sleep? So give me the specifics of what you're referring to, because right now my question is how? How did it affect your studying? Again, I'm going to look to the next sentence hoping for some clarification or expansion on this idea. Unfortunately, the next sentence jumps forward in time. So we don't have a clear connection. Like I said, imagine that you're telling this story to your friends. Your friends might say, well, wait a second, how or what happened? As a result, my grades dropped drastically. Why? Again, I don't really know what happened between the noise of the factory and your final examination, so I don't really know why your grades dropped drastically. You'd started by mentioning a specific exam, a final examination, and now you're talking about grades drastically dropping. So that implies something that occurred throughout the course of a semester, or again, you can see that I'm really trying to draw these connections and put this together, and it's difficult for me to do. So this is what you want to keep in mind as you're writing. But let's go on. As a result, my grades dropped drastically from straight A's to B's and C's, and from first in class to 10th in the class. So again, why did this happen? Provide some more clarity. It was so frustrating, but I just cannot do anything about it. Now I ask the question, why not? Why can't you do anything about it? Perhaps you can study harder. Perhaps you can speak with a professor. Is it because the factories are still making noise after the festive season ends? So you want to try to, again, produce that type of clarity in your writing where it really makes sense to me what specifically you're referring to. Now, you've also heard us say many times before, In your writing, you want to focus on the who, what, when, where, why, and how. So again, I want you to treat your essay, the example that you develop in your essay, as though it's a story that you're telling. That's a great way to think about it. So if you're talking to a friend or a spouse or someone else and you're telling them a story, what kinds of questions might they ask while they're listening to your story? So they might interrupt and say, wait a second, what do you mean you couldn't do anything about it? Couldn't you talk to your professor? Couldn't you wear earplugs? Couldn't you go to sleep earlier? Couldn't you go study at a library? So there's a lot of questions that might come up in telling this story. So think of your example as a story: who, what, when, where, why, and how. And when you're able to do that and provide that kind of detail and information to reduce those questions, then your essay will have the kind of clarity it needs to get a higher score. So I hope this helps give you some ideas today of what you can do. Let me give you a good practice exercise. Take a question for the independent writing task on the TOEFL and just do a quick brainstorm outline of who, what, when, where, why, and how with whatever example you want to do to support your opinion, to support your reason. So this, of course, would be an exercise outside of TOEFL conditions. I always want to make that disclaimer. But just outline the who was involved in the situation. What happened? What events can you unfold from beginning to middle to end? Why did this occur? How did it occur? So keep those questions in mind. Try that brainstorming activity and let us know on the YouTube page in the comments below how it went. Okay, so if you are interested, you can click on the link below to access our forum. Each week we're going to post a new question, and we welcome you to put together a response to that question, repost it to our forum, and as I said, every week we're going to choose one question to review here on YouTube. As usual, if you have any questions, feel free to contact us, www.noteful.com. We're always here to help. Otherwise, best of luck with your studies this week, and we'll see you next week.